Zainabin Gandhi. So she's with a wealth of expertise as a certified financial planner and a master's degree in finance from LSU. Zainabin brings a unique blend of knowledge and experience to the table. Starting from Bombay, her journey has led her to work closely with business owners and families nationwide, offering invaluable insights into comprehensive financial planning and tax strategy. For the past 13 years, Zainabin has called Houston her home, where she resides with her husband and two kids. Tonight, she has graciously agreed to join us to speak on the vital topic of household budgeting. In a world where fiscal responsibility is of paramount importance, Zainabin's advice is timely and very invaluable, reminding us of all that prudent financial management extends beyond earning to the art of saving and investing wisely. Please join us in extending a warm welcome to Zainabin Gandhi as she shares her expertise and illuminates the path toward financial security and prosperity. Over to you, Zainabin.
Wow, nice introduction, Uzafabai. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Hello and welcome. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for joining us today. I hope that everybody's through the storm, has power back, and no one has had any major damages. Today, like Uzafabai said, we're going to be sharing with you all some tips and tricks for household budgeting. Mane khabar che it's not a fun topic. It's so much better to talk about where our next vacation can be, or where we should go out and eat, or what car should we buy. But the truth is, budgeting is often the first step in helping us make a lot of those dreams become a reality. And so I'll share a little personal story about what got me interested in finance and the subject. Mejeware High School ma hati India ma. Mara abba ni office ma jati thi summer vacations ma. So mara abba electrical engineer che ane always ghana busy rehta tha. Engineering was his passion. He loved working on his projects. But guess what he did not enjoy? He did not enjoy dealing with the money aspect of it. Because of that, he would always delay finalizing the cost of his projects, sending out bills to his clients. Now, he still had to pay his employees' salary. He still had to pay his suppliers on time. And so because of that, often there used to be a mismatch between the timing of income and expenses. And that could sometimes cause a cash flow crunch and unnecessary stress, even though they were working really hard, always had new business coming in. So for me, it was a lesson very early on that you can be really good at what you do. You can be technically very smart. You can be the best engineer, a wonderful doctor. You can be a great lawyer, be fantastic at sales. But if you don't have a good handle on your finances, you could be losing out on a lot of opportunities. And so similarly, from a household budgeting standpoint, there might be some months where you feel that, well, we made a lot of money, but we have no idea where it went. We weren't able to meet our goals. Ghani baar em kariye che ke barkat nathi thai. So today we will try to address some of that through this process of budgeting. Next slide, please. So our objective for the next 30 or so minutes will be, one, we want to take the fear out of this very boring and often dreaded task. Ghani baar apne bahut information hoy che about a certain topic, it becomes overwhelming. So we will try and simplify this process as much as possible. We will review how to build a budget. We're going to go through a couple of budgeting tools, and I'll share some resources at the end of the presentation. We will learn how to set financial goals. And then I'll wrap it up with a couple of tax planning strategies, because I know that taxes can be one big expense for a lot of businesses and households. So we'll just share a little bit about that. So let's dive in with a poll question. Next slide, please. So you will see a poll question come up on your screen. And the question is, how would you rate your current expertise in creating and managing budgets? So it's something that you have never done before, no experience, don't know where to start. You're a beginner, you have some idea about it. You do this on a regular basis, so you have some experience, or you're an expert. You have a great budget, everything's going on track. You know exactly what your income and expenses are. Are we putting the poll question on? Okay.
Few more responses. Come. Okay. In the poll
Great.
now.
All right, so looks like we have a pretty good diversified experience level. There are about 20% that have never done this before, no biggie. So whether you're a budgeting pro, whether you're just starting out your financial journey, I'm hoping that this session kind of gives some help to everybody. Next slide, please. So whether you're a young worker just starting out your career, you just moved out on your own, whether you're an established household, you have steady income, या તમે business owner છો, fluctuating income છે, fluctuating cash flow છે, or if you're a retiree who just has social security or pension income, or you're living off of your savings, the hope is that you will all benefit from this exercise, although your budget is going to look very different depending on the stage of life that you're in. So next slide, please. So I realized that in today's day and age, it is very easy to meet expenses. Everywhere we go, there are expenses. So there's targeted advertisement. ઘણી વાર આપણે સોચ્યું નથી હોતું કે આપણે શું વસ્તુની જરૂર છે, પણ Google ને ખબર હોય છે કે આપણા સામને કેવી ad મૂકવાની. So it makes it very hard not to spend money. There's impulsive spending. We probably don't have the money in our bank account, but we are so tempted to buy something. We say, let's just put this on the credit card now, and then we'll pay it off in a few days. Or stress spending. I'm working so hard day and night. I deserve to spend the money that I'm making without anyone telling me what I should do. On top of that, there are so many outside influences, right? તમે Instagram પર જોઈએ છે તો કોઈ luxury vacation લે છે, કોઈ મોટી ગાડી લીધું, કોઈ મોટું ઘર લીધું. So it's human nature to want that. And there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it does motivate us to do better, work harder. But what we don't want to see is doing it at the expense of our long-term goals. So next slide, please. So why budget? Knowing and using financial literacy can take us from a place of being overwhelmed, being stressed out, to getting to be in a place of control. It helps us develop some healthy savings and spending habits, so we're not a slave to our paycheck. So we will take the example, we're going to do a little case study of one of my dear friends. Her name is Eurobane Poundwala. So Eurobane she lives with her husband. She has 2 children. She's been a homemaker for most of her life. During COVID, she decided to explore her skill set of baking. And now 4 years later, she's a successful entrepreneur. She's very good at sales. She's great at bringing in customers. However, she went from managing her household budget with just one income to income now from her husband's job as well as her business. So while they're making more money, what she realized is that the expenses went up the same amount. It's often called lifestyle creep, and she has no idea where it's being spent. So in spite of the higher income, she doesn't feel like they're any better off now than they were 3 years ago. So we decided to kind of help her navigate this. And what we told her to do was write down 3 things that enhances the quality of your life. And so what she came up with was this. Very important for her and her family is her faith. So following the teachings of our beloved Aka Mola, the ability to pay wajibat, the flexibility to attend Ashara Mubarakah with Mola whenever possible, amongst a lot of other things. She also wants to spend quality time with her family, wants to see her children grow into well-rounded adults, and then have the ability to help those that are not as fortunate, don't have the same resources as she does. So we will use these guiding principles that she has to formulate some short-term and long-term goals for her. So what I would suggest for all of you who are looking to get on this journey of budgeting, haven't done it before you start that process, you want to determine your why. What is it that is going to motivate you to stay on track? And so with that, we have another poll question. Let's see. Next slide, please. So what is your motivation to create a budget? Is it to pay off debt quicker? You have new member joining your family? You just aren't able to make ends meet? What am I doing wrong? You want to save for a milestone, wedding આવે છે, બચ્ચાઓનું કઈ કોલેજનું છે, retirement વાસ્તે save કરવું છે. Or it could be a lot of other things too, by the way.
So nobody with a new baby is on this call.
They're too busy taking care of the baby.
There is one. 60% of the participants have responded so far. We just give 10 more seconds. Okay, so I'll end the poll.
All right. Well, super. So the majority of the participants feel like they have a milestone that they want to save for, which is fantastic. We have about 15% each to pay off debt for retirement planning. And then, of course, we have 15% that are trying to figure out how to create a surplus every month. So all of your income is spoken for, it's going towards expenses. I'm barely able to make ends meet. What can we do? I will tell you that this presentation, as much as possible, will try to address all of the different groups, but we may not be able to go into too much detail as it relates to specific areas or specific questions. So let's go to our next slide. And this is, again, looking at all of the different goals that Eurobane has put together. So I'm going to close this. So what we had her build was both short-term and long-term goals. One of the big things we want to make sure is that she has emergency savings for about 6 months worth of living expenses. So something happens, she has a business and the income's not coming in. You always want to have a place to go to for cash. Most Americans have about 5 to 7 emergencies in a year. So koi baar car breakdown thai jai, koi baar you need appliances, koi baar your AC stops working in the middle of summer. Sometimes we may have a storm and we need a new roof. And so we always want to make sure that we have a place to go to for unexpected expenses. The other thing that's important for her is to save for Ashara travel. Because this can get to be a pretty big amount, we wanted to make sure that she has a dedicated fund for that she's saving every month. She wanted a bigger car for her growing business and family eventually. So that is a longer term goal that we can save a little bit on an ongoing basis. She wants to take her children to Ziyarat in the next 2 to 3 years, pay off Qarzan for her home and her store. And then a couple of things that she has thought about long-term is making sure that she's saving for her children's college tuition and to achieve financial independence. The last bit is something that it hits home to a lot of people. And what happens with business owners is that typically your business is like your baby. You're passionate about it. And you don't necessarily see yourself retiring, but there will come a time where you're not able to work at the same level. And so planning for that, saving money towards that goal is extremely important. Typically, the rule of thumb is that you will need about 80% of your current expenses in retirement. So let's say that you're spending $10,000 a month today, you're going to need somewhere between $7,000 to $8,000 in retirement to kind of maintain the same lifestyle, assuming that now kids are off your payroll, they're out of the house, you don't have expenses associated with children, you still need about 70 to 80% of your current expenses in retirement. So it's a pretty lofty goal to make sure and accomplish. There can be other goals that people can have. Some people dream of having their own business. So mula kahe che ki apne business minded baniye. To give ourselves that opportunity to make that leap, we want to make sure we have some savings to help with that transition. And so with that said, we're going to be talking a little bit about what that process looks like. And as we look at just the broad process of budgeting, right? The first thing that we need to do is determine our income. So what does that income look like? We need to track our expenses until we know where our expenses are, where are we spending money. We're not going to be able to get to where we need to be. Based on our income and expenses, we develop a budget plan. We then implement it when adjust, meaning that this entire process does not happen overnight. It's going to take at least 3 to 9 months for you to really determine where you are today, where you want to go, and then what that process is going to look like from getting from point A to point B. And so let's take a look at a couple of different ways to track this. In the one thing before we kind of get into the budget is budget's not just about income and expenses, right? It's about our values. So for instance, we have a friend, Mohammed Bhai. For Mohammed Bhai, it's very important to be fit. He likes to work out 6 days a week. He likes to have top of the line equipment, good trainers, great classes. He doesn't mind spending $300 a month in gym membership. So now he doesn't care about eating out as much or splurging on new clothes. So it is going to be very important that when you build your budget, you build it for your specific needs and priorities. Your budget is going to be like your fingerprint. It's going to be very, very unique and very specific to you. For instance, another friend of ours, Farida Bin, she loves to travel. Now, she doesn't mind having a small home because she wants to have that flexibility to travel. So the basic tenet of budgeting is that you want to follow what your priorities are. Following someone else's money plan will not make you happy if it's not reflecting your own goals and values. So let's see how we're going to help Eurobin get there. We're going to share a spreadsheet now, and we will kind of just walk everybody through what that process looks like. And the way that we'll go through this, so I know कि तम लोगों को घना लोगों phone पर हंसो तो तुम्हारे screen नानी हंसे. This spreadsheet is very busy. We don't mind sharing this after the call, but I just wanted to give everybody an opportunity to kind of see what are some of the broad categories that people typically look at when you're tracking your income and expenses. And so Eurobin and her husband Yen Bhai. Now, Yen Bhai job करे छे, तो एमनी salary is pretty consistent month over month, whereas because Eurobin ni business छे fluctuate થાય છે, so we had them go in and track their expenses for 3 months to kind of get an idea of what their average income and expenses are. So we had them track their income for the last 3 months, February, March, and April, and then come up with a 3-month average. That is something I would encourage most people to do. Just kind of get a trend of what your income and expenses look like, especially if they fluctuate, especially if they're very. And then for the expenses, if we can go back to the presentation, I want to show the broad categories of expenses that we would like to track. And so typically when you look at expenses, it's broken down in two different buckets, what your needs are and what your wants are. So needs are those which basically take care, next slide. So needs are those that you absolutely need. Roti kapra makan, right? We want to make sure that you have, next slide, please. You have enough money allocated towards your needs. And next slide, please, right there, thank you. And so as far as those needs go, they can be fixed, meaning that those expenses stay fixed month over month, meaning your rent, it can be your certain phone bills, it can be the Qarzan Hasana that you're paying. So those are fixed amounts that you have to pay no matter what happens. Needs can also be variable. So for instance, you have your utilities, you have groceries, you have gas expenses, etc. And so you want to first look at what your needs are. And then the next bucket is the wants. Those are discretionary. They're nice to have, eating out, traveling, going on a vacation, whatever the case might be. So those are wants. And so just kind of having a broad idea of what your needs and wants look like, and then separating those out in different categories would be a good starting point. I'm sorry, but if you can go back to the Excel spreadsheet, please. Thank you. And so when we take a look at Eurobane's budget, she had started listing her expenses in various categories. And I'm going to just read some of these out for people that cannot read it on their phone. So housing. So she has housing dues. She's paying back Qarzan Hasana every month. That is something she absolutely needs to allocate money towards. Property taxes. So amma ghana bada expenses eva hoy che je only once a year ave che, right? For instance, property taxes hoy, ke tamara wajibat hoy, ke auto insurance na premiums hoy. There are certain categories that you have to pay them all at once. But it's important that you build that in your monthly budget. So you divide those up between 12 different small buckets and have a line item allocated towards each of those items. Then she has masjid dues. So again, making sure she's saving for wajibat, for sabil, FMB contribution, masjid, mawaid, madrasa tuition, etc. Transportation, healthcare. So those are all of the different needs that she has. And then there are the variable costs, the ones that keep changing from month over month. So we have all our utilities, groceries, etc. And then very important to have one item which says unplanned expenses, right? So she did have some roofing related issues this month with the storm. And so making sure that we have allocated some money towards those emergency expenses is extremely important. The next bucket that she has is all of her different wants. So clothing, eating out, entertainment, whatever the case might be. And so now, when we take an average of all of her expenses and income, she's really left with about $1,000 surplus right now. However, previously, $1,000 a spend kari natte. She wouldn't know where it's gone. Now, as she's tracking this closely, she has a good idea of what is going on with her monthly budget. And what we will do is encourage her to use that surplus to allocate towards those goals that we have created. So remember all those goals that we had listed: emergency funds, Ashura Mubarak fund, education, etc. If you can just scroll down a little bit. So we will start allocating some of those surplus monies that she has towards those goals, towards those priorities. And you can list your priorities however you feel important. And this is basically a starting point for her to know where she's at, whether or not she's in a surplus or deficit, and use this as a guiding tool to then build a budget. And I'm going to go over an app very quickly for those of us who are very tech savvy maybe and prefer using apps on the phone versus spreadsheets. I'll go over that in just a minute as well. And so Excel spreadsheets are great, guys. It allows you a lot of flexibility. You can build your budget the way you want. You can maneuver it. You can manipulate it the way you want. But what happens is, with success in budgeting, you have to be consistent. And if we're not consistent, then there is really no point in starting the exercise. What happens with Excel, though, is that there is a lot of manual input needed. Each time tame bahar jao, groceries karwa jao, your credit card swipe karo, you have to make sure that you are disciplined enough to come and update your budgeting sheet. And not a lot of us have that discipline or the time to actually do it. So in today's day and age, when technology is so ingrained and when we're on the move all the time, we could potentially use certain apps that really help automate that process. And so the concept still stays the same. The concept is still to track all of the different line items with this particular budgeting process, but the way that you do it on the app, and there is a popular app that's called YNAB, You Need a Budget. And so this is kind of just a dummy account that we had created to share with you the capabilities of this particular app. I think the people that are younger, more in tune with apps on your phone, you'll really like it. And the concept with YNAB is you want to give every dollar a job. So every dollar of income that you get, you want to assign it a job before it is spent. So let's say that I have $10,000 in my account. I create an account and I say I have $10,000. You only want to put the amount that you actually have in your account, not a paycheck that is coming on next Friday, or not a project that you're going to get paid for next month. It only is going to be money that you have in your bank account today. And so once you have that, these are all of the different categories that you can customize based on your needs. So again, Eurobane has customized these savings goals and then the bills and wants, etc., that she had. For the purposes of this webinar, I won't be able to go into too much detail on how to use the app, but it's extremely user-friendly. And I will also share one really nice feature about it. So one thing that you can also do with YNAB, remember I was talking about long-term goals? This budgeting app can actually keep you on task to get you towards your long-term goals. And so if you can go up and show me the create, so click on a savings goal. And right there. And so if you scroll down a little bit, actually click on education, please. So that's one that I haven't. So you can do a create target. And what that means is, let's say that you want to save $20,000 in the next 4 years for one of your child. You can create a custom savings goal that goes out 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, it doesn't matter. And you can tell it how much you want to save over what period of time, and it's going to calculate how much you would need to put aside towards that goal on a monthly basis. And then as you start adding money to this, you then get pretty close to a motivation. Basically, it'll tell you, well, you're 5% there, you're 10% there, you're 110% there. So it's a very nice way to essentially create motivation for you to get to those goals that are sometimes 5 years away, sometimes decades away. So again, great tool. If somebody does have specific questions about the app, can reach out to me later on. But in the interest of time, we'll try to move on from this. So again, coming back to this the whole concept of budgeting, right? What this is allowing you to do is, one, you want to track what your past expenses have been, so you know where you stand. You want to be able to say where you want to go from here. And the budgeting goal would be to have about 50 or 60% of your overall income going towards your needs. Next slide, please. About 20 to 30% going towards flexible expenses. And you always want to have about 20% going towards your goals. They can be either savings goals, they can be paying down debt, whatever it might be. But that is the rule of thumb to kind of show whether or not you are somewhat in the ballpark. Now, let's say that you start tracking your expenses and you feel like, well, my expenses, my income's going about 60% to needs and 40% to wants, and nothing is going towards savings. Well, there is a problem there. And we would have to go in and identify, well, what are some of the things that we can do to change that equation a little bit. So this is kind of a rule of thumb to help you see whether or not you're somewhat on track with those percentages. There is one other budgeting tool that I really like, and this might be something that works for people that have established households where your income per month is a little bit more than expenses. So there is surplus income. You're not really worried about making ends meet. The way that that works is, that's the next slide, please. The way that that works, it's called the 2-account plan. And basically what it does is you want to identify what those savings goals are. So let's say, okay, I want to send both my kids to college for 4 years each, and I want to fund that. And for that, I want to save $80,000 per child. I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to identify how much I need to be saving per month. And I put that money away as soon as I get my income. So I'm putting my income straight away towards education, straight away towards retirement, towards Vajibat, towards a Shara fund, whatever that is. And then the rest of it goes towards expenses. I don't care where it's going. I don't want to maintain those line items. I don't want to see whether it's going towards groceries or towards gas. It's big picture, but as long as I have peace of mind that my big goals have been taken care of, then I really don't have to worry about whether or not the rest of the money is being spent. That is another way to handle it for certain households where you do have surplus income over expenses. So with that said, I do want to just talk a little bit about some tax planning items real quick, and then we will call it a wrap. So if you go on to the next slide, please. The reason this is important, in my opinion, is because taxes can be a pretty big percentage of a lot of people's expenses. And I am not a CPA. I do work with a lot of people with tax planning strategies. And so a couple of things that I feel would be relevant. For people that are working, have access to certain retirement accounts, you can defer income in a retirement account. It can be an IRA, a SEP IRA for consultants, self-employed people. It can be a 401k, etc. And what that allows you to do is, if you are in a high tax bracket now, it allows you to defer your income so you don't pay any tax on the money that you're putting away towards a retirement account. So you're meeting two goals. One is you're reducing your current expenses, but you're also able to meet your long-term savings goal. Now you can keep that money in cash. You can explore some real estate investments through retirement accounts, etc. I will not be able to go into those details right here, but that's a great tax planning idea. The other thing is qualified charitable donations. So for those people that do have retirement accounts and are over age 70, you can actually take your distributions from your IRA and make donations to 501c3 organizations. You can put money, even pay Vajibat with that from your IRA cash and not have to pick it up as taxable income. So again, it's a great strategy for people that do have retirement accounts that are over age 70. Donor advised fund. So let's say that you have a very high income year. You had a great project that came through, you made $1 million in profit, and now you're going to pay 40% of that towards taxes. Well, if you are charitably inclined, which, you know, most of us are, what you can do is take a big chunk of that money and allocate that towards a donor advised fund. So let's say you take $100,000 of that profit, you put it into a DAF, a donor advised fund, and take a tax deduction for that $100,000 right away. However, the good news is that you don't actually have to donate that $100,000 right away. You can donate that over the course of the next 5, 10, 15 years, how many of years you want to spread that out. So it's a great way to basically use a strategy like a donor advised fund to reduce your taxable income now and fund your charitable goals, including, again, paying Vajibat through that over the course of the next several years. And then the last one is called the Augusta rule. This is not actually a very well-known rule, but something that if you plan it out properly, it can work out really well for certain business owners. So what it allows you to do is rent out your primary residence or your vacation home to your business for up to 14 days. The income that you get from it is tax-free, does not have to be reported on taxable income. And it is a very legitimate way of increasing your tax deductible business expenses too. So again, there are some things that you have to follow to make sure that you are complying with the IRS. But again, not a very well-known rule, but can be used very well strategically by business owners if you think about that properly. So again, creative but legal ways to help reduce your payment to the IRS. And then I'll share with you just some resources as it relates to apps and a few podcasts, etc. If anybody's interested in learning more about the process. Next slide, please. And so these are certain apps. Some portions of these apps are free. For YNAB, the one that we just went through, you need a budget. So you can actually create your budget for free. But if you want your bank accounts, your credit cards, etc., linked so that you can automate that entire process, then you do have to pay a monthly fee for it. But I feel that if that keeps you on track, keeps you disciplined, keeps you consistent, it's worth paying that $9 a month or so to kind of get you started. There are some great books, great podcasts out there, if that is something that you are interested in learning more about. So last slide, please. And so creating and starting the budgeting process is easy. Again, keeping it in front of us, refining it, making adjustments, sticking to it is tough. And this is where your why comes into play. This is where your motivation comes into play. You always want to keep your goals in front of you. For me, I try to keep them close to my office laptop. That way I see that on an ongoing basis. I know these are some of the things I want to do. Agar aap na samne hui che, to you tend to kind of pay more attention to it. As far as keeping your budget on track, I would say pick 1 or 2 dates in the month. Collect all your bills, collect all your credit card statements. If you're going to do that Excel spreadsheet, then you want to make sure you're populating that at least twice a month, if not more. If you're doing the app, then go in, categorize your expenses at least twice a month. That way it doesn't get overwhelming if you log in after a long time. One thing that has worked for us is making sure that you're working with somebody that can keep you accountable. So it can be your friend, it can be your parent, it can be your spouse, anybody that can keep you accountable for this pretty important task. And then set up a small reward for yourself. Okay, bhai, apne jaine abadu karu. We went in, we took care of, budgeting. We made sure we made adjustments. Give yourself a little treat, have some fun. Budgeting is about 80% behavior and just 20% math. So I would say if we can kind of make some adjustments to our behavior, it will take us a pretty long way. And to wrap this up, I will say it's important to track where our money is going, but an equal amount of effort should be spent in figuring out ways to increase our income also. Having an abundance mindset, believing that there is a lot that this world has to offer and that you deserve it, helps you come a very long way towards financial independence. So I think that's pretty much all I have. If anyone has any questions, we can address those.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zainabin. It was really insightful and very valuable. Absolutely. I'm sure Sagra Faidolido Sanasi. If anyone has any questions, please you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask that question. However, just one request that not to ask any specific questions related to tax advice or business opening advice and things like that. You can do a one-on-one later on. We can provide you the contact details. Okay, one question that came through the chat, Zainabin, was also that that you mentioned about the fact that keep the money as soon as the income comes in, keep those money aside. However, because we live in the world of credit cards, right, and we have access to free money from that area as well, that pay expense now, pay later. So then how do someone manage that in terms of like, okay, expense to take you now, and the money that we had to put aside, which was cash, we also did that. What to do now? How to plan for that?
Yeah. And so that app that we were referring to, what the budgeting process lets you do is, okay, when you're planning your budget, so you have a certain amount allocated towards all of these different expenses. Let's say ke maru income a mahina ma 10,000 che, just as a round number. I have allocated $10,000 to all of these different things that I want to do. So let's say I put $400 towards eating out. And now when we actually go out, we end up spending a lot more, right? Because we have, like you said, we have access to credit cards, we have access to ways to spend money where we don't actually have the cash. So that's going to need to come out of some other category then. So it could very well be in order to pay for that expense, it now has to come out of your vacation fund, or it needs to come out of an important need that you had where you were saving for emergencies. So there has to be a compromise that you end up making when you have certain expenses where you're spending more than what you had budgeted for. And when you see that happening month over month over month, you will realize that you are having to give up on some of your long-term goals because of that. And that kind of helps drive that discipline in hopefully getting back on track.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Another question that has come through the chat is, how can budgeting help someone who is trying to make ends meet?
Yeah, and that's a great question, guys. And so what I would say is, look at your categories of expenses, and most likely people that are finding it hard to make ends meet are likely looking at all of those expenses on an ongoing basis. But for instance, let's say your health insurance, right? Can you find a way to reduce your health insurance premiums by going for a high deductible plan, for instance? Or your premiums, does it make sense to increase your deductible on your auto insurance premium to reduce your outgoing expense? Take a look at your credit card statements very, very closely. Look at any subscriptions that you might have that you have been paying for a long time and forgotten about it because auto draft per jai che, so you've not necessarily looked at it. So taking a fine-tooth comb and going through each of your expense item would be one step to kind of figure out, well, is there any room for me to reduce my expenses? But I would say then simultaneously, if you're still working, and if you're retired, then I know that that will be a different answer. But if you're still working, finding ways to increase your income is equally important. And I know that it's easier said than done. But if you're working for somebody, if you're doing a job, then look around you, see what skill sets other people have that is making them more successful. And are you able to develop your skill sets? Are you able to do certain courses, certifications, etc., to get there? Can you find ways and means to be in front of your manager, to get more visibility? Talk to them and tell them, hey, my goal is to increase my income 10% by 6 months. In 6 months, what do I need to do to get there? Can I take on more responsibilities? So finding ways to kind of stay ahead at your workplace. Again, if you're still working, if you're doing a job for somebody, then that's a great motivation to help you kind of increase your income versus thinking about how we should continue to slash expenses. It'll be a different answer if it's a retiree, though, that I know has fixed income coming in, and I know that because of inflation, expenses have been going up. That can be a tough conversation. I won't be able to address all of that here, but if someone has any specific things, I certainly can get on a call with you.
So thank you so much, Zainabin. We'll just take one last question. I know we are right on time as well. There's one question mentioning if you would be able to expand more on the 2-account plan that you mentioned a little while ago. Yeah. So 2-account plan. So for instance, let's say your expenses per month are, I'm just going to use round numbers here. But let's say that your expenses are $6,000. $6,000 a month takes care of most of your needs, and your income is $9,000 a month. Now, if you have tracked your budget for a few months, you'll have a pretty good handle on that. You'll have a pretty good handle on what your income looks like, what your ongoing average expenses look like for the majority of the categories, right? So what I would then do is, look, I know that I have a surplus income coming in every month, more than my expenses. Now what I will do is I will take that income and first put it towards paying myself. That's what it's generally called. You want to pay yourself first, meaning that you want to pay towards your retirement goals, pay towards your wajibat, save money towards your kids' education. So for instance, what I do is I have 2 children. I'm hoping to send them to college if they get their act together. And I like to kind of save towards that. They are a few years away from college right now. Every 2 weeks, I put in a little bit of money to each of their separate accounts that is dedicated towards their education fund. I also put away some money every 2 weeks for Murtaza and my retirement. At some point, we will not be able to continue working the way that we are, but we'll still need to have money to spend. And so I put away that money right away into those retirement accounts, for instance. Same thing for all the other big goals that we have. So again, Ashara travel, Vajibat che, Tamara charitable goals, JB che, any of those big ticket items where you know you have to plan it a little bit ahead of time. I try to do that on a bi-weekly basis. And then after that, whatever expenses you have, I don't really track what those line items are. So on a month-to-month basis, I have a feel for what the household expenses are, but I don't have to actually track them to see how much went towards eating out versus buying clothes versus groceries. Does that help? I hope so. Yeah, got a message. Shukran. So I think that was very helpful. I think that the overall message is not to kind of get very much bogged down into tracking down specific items on a day-to-day basis, being very much transactional, but like taking care of the high ticket areas, high ticket items, and kind of putting that money aside. So I think it's this very efficient way that you have explained to everyone. So I think it should definitely be very beneficial. We had like more than 100 participants join the session. So I think this was very good. Thank you so much, Zainabin. We are really thankful to you for speaking on this topic. And thanks everyone for joining. ઘણું શુક્રિયા બધાનું join કરવાનું અને
Yeah.
we'll inform of the next session soon.
Umar Sharif ne tarozi qiyamah daraz kare. Thank you, Tijarat, for organizing this. This was wonderful. And all the participants.
Shukran. Thanks everyone.